It's one of the strangest contradictions in the United States. The Northeast, a cradle of cities, commerce, and crowds, hides a vast, almost uninhabited wilderness at its northern tip. To the south, millions live packed together. But up here, there's plenty of room for everyone, yet almost no one takes advantage of it. How did this happen? How did the heart of America's most crowded region end up with one of its loneliest frontiers? The U.S. Northeast is home to more than 50 million people. It's one of the busiest and most densely populated regions in the entire country. But nearly 90% of those people live in its southern half. If you head north, beyond the big cities and highways, everything changes. The noise fades, and the lights become sparse. You find yourself in another world, a quiet land of forests, lakes, and mountains stretching across northern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. This is the empty Northeast of the United States. And the mystery is simple. Why is this part of one of the country's most crowded regions so empty? First, let's look at New England itself. Massachusetts and Rhode Island are bursting at the seams, while Maine, Vermont, and New Hampshire feel very open. Connecticut sits in the middle, literally and figuratively. Massachusetts is basically a people magnet. Most live around Boston and nearby cities like Cambridge, Worcester, and Springfield, where everything is close, crowded, and urbanized. Rhode Island may be small, but it has the density of a large city. Connecticut is right between Boston and New York, and it shows. It has a busy coast and quieter towns inland. It's neither too full nor too empty. It's the middle ground. As soon as you cross into New Hampshire, everything slows down. There are Manchester and Nashua, but a larger part of the state is forest, lakes, and open land. Then there's Vermont, easily the least populated region of all. The Green Mountains run right through the middle, and most people live in small towns. And Maine is huge, and mostly empty. Most stay on the southern coast. If you go north, you find endless forests, lakes, and long, silent roads. It's beautiful, but it feels like the edge of the map. Today, the northern half of the Northeast, northern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, is home to only about 5 million people. That's roughly the same as the population of the Boston metropolitan area alone. To put it in perspective, if you take southern New York and southern New England, roughly the same land area, you get about 10 times more people living there. So what causes this difference? It all comes down to geography, history, and economics, and how they've always worked together to keep the North empty. Let's start with the land itself. The thing is, the further north you go, the tougher the terrain becomes. Southern New England and southern New York are full of rolling hills, wide valleys, and coastal plains. But then come the mountains. They are ancient, eroded, and wild. In northern New York, you'll see the Adirondacks. To the east, the Green Mountains cross central Vermont and stretch up toward Quebec. If you keep going, you reach the White Mountains of New Hampshire. There stands Mount Washington, famous for having some of the most extreme weather on the planet. And beyond that, the mountains of western Maine continue into Canada. These aren't just gentle hills. They are real barriers, and they owe their shape to one of the most powerful forces in Earth's history: ice. During the last ice age, massive glaciers covered these lands. When they finally retreated, they carved deep valleys and left behind a layer of thin, rocky soil. Later, those basins filled with water, creating thousands of lakes and ponds. It's a beautiful land, but difficult to live in. Agriculture never had a chance here, unlike further south where the land is much more fertile. So the mountains stayed wild, covered in dense forests that even today stretch for miles. Northern Maine and the Adirondacks together form one of the largest continuous forests east of the Mississippi River. For centuries, people have come here to log, fish, or hunt, but never in large crowds. And then there's the climate. Up here, winters are long, dark, and cold. Snow piles up early and doesn't leave easily. Summers are short, and the growing season barely begins before it's over. It's not exactly a place that says, "Come start a new life," but of course some people did. And this is where history comes in. Long before Europeans arrived, these lands were home to indigenous nations. The Abenaki, who lived in Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, had complex trade routes connecting their communities from present-day Quebec to Massachusetts. Further west, the powerful Iroquois Confederacy extended its influence into the Adirondacks, controlling vast hunting grounds and trade routes. Then the Europeans arrived. In the 17th century, French explorers and fur traders moved south from Quebec. They set up posts along rivers and lakes that connected the region with Canada. They saw opportunity, furs, fishing, timber, but not farmland. The dense forest and harsh winters kept settlements small and scattered. The English, for their part, expanding north from the Massachusetts Bay Colony, focused on the coast. They settled in southern Maine and New Hampshire, but moving inland was another story. Between the cold, the forest, and the resistance of native nations, their progress was slow and dangerous. For more than a century, the interior of the northern Northeast remained wild. Later, around the 1760s, the British took control of the region. Land speculators arrived, especially in Vermont, which both New York and New Hampshire claimed as their own. These overlapping claims led to chaos and, eventually, Vermont declared itself an independent republic in 1777. For 14 years, it existed on its own until it joined the United States in 1791 as the 14th state. New Hampshire pushed inland from the coast, building towns in the valleys between its granite mountains. Maine, meanwhile, spent centuries as part of Massachusetts. Its economy revolved around timber and shipbuilding. Trees became masts and planks for the growing British and, later, American navies. And in northern New York, the Adirondacks remained a wild frontier long after the rest of the state filled up. The terrain was too rough and the winters too harsh. Logging, mining, and later tourism would bring people north, but never in large numbers. By the mid-1800s, southern parts of New England were booming. Cities were growing, factories were nonstop, and immigrants were arriving in huge numbers. But the northern regions stayed quiet. So, as we know, the mountains are the first big barrier. They make everything harder: traveling, building, farming, and surviving the winter. The soil is thin, rocky, and poor, and what's underneath isn't much better. The region doesn't have rich mineral deposits or coal, seems like the Appalachians further south. Without valuable resources to exploit or easy land to farm, there weren't many reasons for settlers to stay. That was one of the reasons the economy never took off. The empty Northeast never became an industrial center. Southern New England had rivers that powered the first factories, ports that connected it to global trade, and cities that attracted millions of immigrants. Northern New England and northern New York had none of that. They had timber, granite, and paper mills. All useful, but those industries didn't create big cities. Even today, the economy up there depends on the same resources, along with tourism. People come to hike, ski, fish, and escape city life, but most don't stay year-round. Towns fill up in summer and fall, then empty out when the snow starts to fall. A few small cities, Portland, Burlington, Manchester, thrive, but there is no Boston or New York here. You won't find massive universities, corporate headquarters, or international airports that attract young people and families. In fact, some states have gone as far as paying people to move there. Maine and Vermont have launched programs offering money to remote workers who relocate. It's a somewhat desperate attempt to reverse decades of population loss. Today, this empty Northeast is home to only about 1% of the U.S. population. It's a land of deep forests, frozen lakes, and quiet towns. The wild spirit never quite left this region, but that stillness is also what makes this place so special. The rest of the Northeast is full of constant noise and movement. Meanwhile, the North is a reminder of what the region once was: wild, cold, and untamed. That is how the heart of America's busiest region remains one of its last true frontiers.